Good morning, everyone. I'm Will Rosenzweig, and I'm here for our Food Biz Plus session today with Megan Mokri, the founder and CEO of Byte Foods. Our topic today is about food at work and how healthy food at work can spur productivity, loyalty, and better health outcomes in the long run. And Megan is one of our star graduates from the Food Venture Lab course. And I thought it would be fun to talk to her about how she used an educational experience, interacted in a kind of a semi-structured environment with other learners to advance her idea. But before we do that, welcome, Megan.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending this time with us this morning. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and Byte Foods, kind of where are you on the journey? It's been a very exciting story following the last, I don't know, is it 12, 18, 24 months now? It's hard to get.
Yeah, a little over a year and a half now.
To get right. Now I can
There you go. Yeah, it's been a little over a year and a half now.
A year and a half, yeah, fantastic. So tell us a little bit about what Byte Foods does and maybe how you came to the idea,
Sure.
And then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So Byte takes kind of your average dumb refrigerator and we make it smart. And we do it in a way that allows us to sell fresh food anywhere, anytime. The fundamental problem that we are addressing right now is that when a company wants to get fresh meals on site, they either have to be large enough to warrant having a cafeteria, or they have to have enough budget to cater for their entire workforce, which is incredibly cost prohibitive. So what we do is we place our smart fridges throughout offices, also hospitals, schools, apartment buildings, gyms, and we stock it with high quality, healthy, fresh food. So everything from salads to breakfast burritos to blue bottle iced coffee. And employees at those locations then can buy fresh food whenever hunger strikes. Where this idea came from, we have an interesting kind of starting story. This all started about 2.5 years ago, actually, when we started with a meal delivery company. The fundamental problem that we were trying to address was how do you get high quality, healthy food to people when they most need it? And we were really addressing that end of day, working professionals driving home. You've got a fridge full of food, but the last thing you want to do is go home and actually cook it because you're exhausted. And so we were looking at how do we do a micro retail concept along these key commuter corridors. That was the initial grain of an idea. And what happened through our launch of 180 Eats at the time was we got live with a delivery company, a meal delivery company. We ran that for about 9 months, and a few things became very apparent. First, it was not an economically viable business model without a huge capital investment. And second, we still weren't solving that problem of last minute. We required advanced ordering in order to be able to predict demand in the kitchen, but also to be able to appropriately run the logistics of the company and make sure deliveries were getting to people at the time that they wanted it. And so 9 months into 180 Eats, we came across this really cool technology called Pantry. Pantry is the original maker, the creator of these smart fridges, and so we licensed them at a few corporate accounts.
Okay, now I'm going to stop you because this story gets really interesting, but I want to go back because you're making this sound very like logical and strategic and like it was all mapped out, and you're using the word we. I want to know more about who we was, because a lot of what we want to do for our entrepreneur audience is kind of help them understand how these things come together. And always after the fact, it's easier to tell the story, but while it's all coming into fruition, it's pretty chaotic. And so let's go back to the original need, because you were a very busy professional also going to
Yep.
school. Were you the person that needed that end of the day healthy meal? That's one question. And then the other is, I think it's important to set the context for what's going on here with healthy
Yeah.
food, especially in the Bay
Hmm.
Area, because, maybe since the founding of Google, which is now, I think, 15 or 16 years ago. So Google's like just a good, hearty teenager now. But Google started on day one. I think their third employee might have been a chef
Hmm.
because the founders really felt strongly that they wanted to be able to eat good food and work all the
Yeah.
time. So they created this really fundamental food
Hmm.
benefit at Google that's become an integral part of the culture. And if you've ever had the good fortune to eat at Google, it's one of the most amazing experiences. It's all provided by the company. And anyway, I want to just roll the kind of the time machine back 15 years because what we've had in Silicon Valley in particular, and these really cutting edge technology companies, is this cultural facet or asset that almost becomes an expectation.
Hmm.
So it turned out with Google having that kind of, you know, call it a perk, um, call it a loyalty program, call it a productivity booster, whatever it was, all of a sudden, all of Google's competitors in the Valley, Apple and Facebook and you name
Yeah.
it, these big companies started Airbnb, right? They started building their own internal
Hmm.
um, food, food service companies inside their
That's right.
company. So I just wanted to kind of share that because it sets the context in which you're working here in the San Francisco Bay Area. You recognize that people were already familiar kind of with this behavior.
Hmm.
Number one, getting healthy food away from home. And then also that the workplace was becoming increasingly an important site for people in this workforce.
Absolutely. And I think you also pair that with more macro trends of, um, consumers, 64% of consumers now trying to eat healthier, and the rise of needing convenient options, but also fresh and quality. And when you pair that also with what you just said, it created this perfect climate for what Byte is working on today.
And then the other aspect that's so interesting, and one of the things I want to get into with you today is that, Google started this really as a way to just be helpful to their employees that were working very long hours. They were basically, look, if you're an engineer and you're working on new code, we don't want to have you to worry about getting up to eat. We'll just bring it to you. But what they came to realize is that how profound those food choices are to the health and well-being um, of the employee population. So they've learned a lot about how to, they don't dictate or mandate anything, but they encourage people to eat food, in a way that's the right amount, the right
Mm-hmm.
portions, the right mix of nutrients and things in a very kind of interesting, inferred way, not a
Right.
mandated way. So I think that's also kind of paved the way for you
Mm-hmm.
with Byte because Byte offers
Mm-hmm.
choice and convenience and
Mm-hmm.
access. And I find that just so compelling. So just now kind of coming back to this pantry. So you're running this last meal of the day delivery service kind of in your backyard,
Yep.
right? In the county in which
Correct.
you and your husband live and you see analogs, probably Blue Apron started
Mm-hmm.
maybe a few months or a year before
Yep.
you. We saw Plated and Munchery and a whole rush of people getting into
Yeah.
this. But you learn
Mm-hmm.
quickly that the economics were really challenging.
Right. Absolutely. When you're delivering a 1 to 3 meals on average to end consumers in a predefined delivery window, those delivery costs they're quite meaningful, and you can end up very quickly. If you don't have the delivery density, losing money on every single delivery. So we knew.
So let's go into some detail. How did you get into business? Did you just decide one day we're going to go deliver meals to people? Or tell us a little bit more about like how you went from, there's a need here, and you personally are experiencing it. So you're kind of the first customer.
Yeah. So my co-founder, who also happens to be my husband, he was full-time on the effort. I was still working in my corporate life. And we said to ourselves, how do we first make sure that people want this besides ourselves? And then once we had done that by surveyed about 500 neighbors using Nextdoor, which is a platform that connects neighbors and allows you to post and send out a survey. That's how we confirmed that the need was there. And then second, we asked ourselves, what is the quickest way to get this live? And just get feedback from customers. So we posted I think we posted a Craigslist ad looking for a chef. We had chef tryouts. We had no idea what we were doing. And we settled on a chef who had a fantastic background. He was actually a former executive chef from Google. And we went live with about 25 customers where we provided 2 weeks worth of meals for free just to get their feedback on the food and the delivery mechanism at this point. And the feedback was fantastic.
So that was kind of your pilot, and you guys just funded that out of your check.
Oh yeah. Well, all of this entire part of the company was bootstrapped because we never reached a point with meal delivery where we knew we want to take other people's money. And we didn't see that path to scaling.
You to make that point.
When what?
I wanted you to make that point because so many people, and I talk to a lot of them, entrepreneurs who end up, in a very enthusiastic phase where everything is looking rosy.
Yeah.
And they're very charismatic, and food is a very hot area.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have 3 students right now who I'm in conversation with who have ended up with the wrong investors. And it's a very painful kind of experience to
undo.
Tie. So I just wanted, to make this point that, so you and your husband kind of have this personal need. You go out and see if other people share the need, and you're prepared to kind of subsidize that through a test yourself.
Right.
Then what happens?
So that went well. People loved the food. They loved the way that it was delivered to them. And so at that point, we.
Can I ask you another question? Because you're going into the food business, but did you have any food experience? No. Did you or your husband have any?
Zero.
No, but zero. But so
how do you get past that?
But you knew you needed a really good chef.
We did.
Because you wanted to eat the food yourself.
Exactly.
So you found a good chef.
We found a good chef who had produced at scale, who had managed the economics of running a food offering at an office, which mindful of food costs, mindful of knowing how to hire. We knew that was our skill gap, and we knew that we couldn't just get anyone to fill that role of being our executive chef. So we knew that we wanted.
How did you know that was your skill gap? How did you know that?
Fortunately, this was pretty obvious because neither of us had any experience in the food industry. My background is in ad technology, and Lee's background's in marketing and PR. And so we knew it was very clear that we had that weakness.
Okay.
So over the course of 9 months bootstrapping this meal delivery company, we served several thousand customers. We grew tremendously, but the fundamentals of getting the economics right and getting them to work in a way where there was a long-term, profitability was viable for the company was not apparent to us.
So unpack that a little bit. Let's go back, because in food, we know we're dealing with a lot of real challenges. One is food costs are high.
Yes.
2, people aren't always used to paying the full cost of
Right.
food. 3, your product was highly perishable, right? You know, if you didn't sell it or it didn't get eaten, it got wasted, which is a whole nother topic. So talk a little bit about like how did you think about determining what a viable economic model looked like? Where did you find analogs or examples, or how did, knowing nothing about food service, how did you inform yourself about that?
We looked at, so first we broke down, when we sell a meal, what does it cost us? So there's the cost of the food, there's the cost of the people to prepare the food, there's the cost to deliver that meal, there's the cost of the packaging. So let's just start there. And that doesn't even include any overhead or facilities costs or marketing. So even at that...
Or let alone your or Lee's
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, because you're looking at the early delivery driver right here. I was out there delivering meals to customers. And just looking at that basic breakdown, the numbers don't work. They certainly didn't work at that point in time in the business. So then we said, okay, what if we're doing 10x, 20x, 100x the volume? How do those numbers adjust? And at that point, we're doing research into what food costs look like in food service or in restaurants and looking at comps to know where we could get that down to. Delivery costs, we had a rough idea of where that could go, but again, we were really focusing on a suburban market and not an urban market like San Francisco, simply because the need for fresh, healthy, immediate options it's higher in a suburban environment than it is in the city where there's a plethora of options. And so just at that base level, we knew the economics don't work. So we were...
you were never going to make a profit even when you scaled up.
Correct. And at that...
But you would have never really known that unless you'd built this pilot.
Correct.
So your first thing was, okay, can we make food that people will eat? You got that. But then you realized that to price it at a level where you would make a profit, there wouldn't be enough people that would be able to pay that on a regular basis, basically.
Yeah.
That it was sort of out of their realm,
yes.
How they thought about it.
Absolutely.
And then you projected ahead to look at a scale scenario, and even that was really daunting.
Yep.
And you're still self-funded, as you called it, bootstrapped.
Yep.
It's all your own money. Can I go off topic a little bit? Because Cheryl O'Loughlin and I talked about this last week, but you and your husband now are both in an entrepreneurial livelihood. That's pretty. And did you have your first child yet by then?
Yeah, she was often. There were times when we would have a delivery driver call in sick, and I would have our daughter in the back seat while I made those deliveries.
I love that image. But I just wanted to kind of, highlight that because it's a really interesting moment in your lives as two young professionals deciding we're going to go for the entrepreneurial livelihood, and now we've got a third little mouth to feed at home. Could be like a lot of risk that you were taking on.
Yeah.
How did you manage that? How did you prepare for that kind of leap into the unknown?
I think, at that stage, and really at every stage of the company, you're reaching different points of risk. And what I've found, for me personally, what helps is to write it down. What is the risk? So let's say it fails. We're fortunate enough to live in the Bay Area with a great job market, with great skill sets, where our worst case was, okay, we have to go back to work in the corporate world. So it was, yes, I'm not going to say it wasn't scary, but actually writing those fears down and putting them on paper brought the reality to be not as scary. But ultimately, we felt that the pull. Lee and I always knew we wanted to start a business together, and we had dabbled doing kind of side projects together. And I don't think either of us would have ever said we would have ended up in food. But we're both passionate about it for very different reasons. And when you feel that pull, you can only ignore it for so long. And we felt that pull very strongly enough where it made sense to, take the plunge.
So now you're at this point, you're at sort of 9 months, you're looking around, wondering, you've learned, I always felt you were pretty rigorous about this, and then you discover this company that has this technology-enabled refrigerator vending machine.
Pantry. And the timing of coming across Pantry was quite serendipitous because it was right around the time when we came to a very clear conclusion that the meal delivery 180 Eats was not a viable path forward for us. So we came across Pantry and we piloted it at a few corporate locations where we had already partnered and had relationships. So 3 locations near our existing delivery area. We had the kitchen and the meals to put in the fridges. And in doing those pilots, very quick realization that first and foremost, there is an acute need here that is not being addressed by any other solution in the market, and that need being an affordable and efficient way for companies to get fresh meals to their employees. And then the second really big aha was this is a profitable business model. You're delivering a large quantity of food to a single location in a delivery window that you dictate. So we're refreshing the fridges. No one's sitting there looking at their watch, wondering where their food is, and oftentimes we get after-hours access. So based on those 2 points, we made the difficult but very obvious decision to pivot away from meal delivery entirely. And that was hard. That meant letting go of some of our staff. We closed down our kitchen because now we 100% source from third parties and we buy wholesale and sell at a retail price.
So you pivoted. That's the classic moment of pivot. Now, but let's go back because you make this sound so easy. Oh, we just found 3 people that we had existing relationships with and they let us put and by the way, Pantry, like how do you get Pantry to go along with this idea?
This was their business model, was licensing their technology out, and so but they were very early on.
Did you have to pay a lot for that, or did you talk them into some sweet deal?
No, and we had at the point where we were at. Yes, it felt like a very large sum of money, absolutely, and it meant committing 6 months of licensing this fridge that we really had no idea how it would perform. And 3 of them at that. So it was risky because it was taking.
So it was a big commitment for you and Lee to step it up and say, okay, we're going to step away from this model, and now we're going to reinvest more of your own money and time.
Absolutely.
In another approach.
But the interesting piece here is this feeds back to that initial seed of an idea of a micro retail concept where you're delivering fresh, healthy food to people at the point that they need it. So those pilots unearthed the fact that, yes, we needed to pivot. And from a financial perspective, the longer we let the meal delivery go on, the more that was going to eat into our cash because it was losing money every month. So that was a forcing function to make that very difficult decision.
Now, can we thread into, because there's another kind of stream to your experience here. So not only are you a new mom whose baby's in the back seat while you were delivering these meals, and you and your husband are collaborating, but you're also in business school in an executive MBA program. Like, how did you do all this? Just amazing.
You find a way. You find a way.
And you brought it all together though, because you did use the educational experiences as a kind of crucible or reflecting surface
absolutely.
A little bit to test ideas.
Well, that was the nice part about leveraging my MBA, leveraging the Food Venture Lab to work on the business. Different classes would have different projects that you would engage in, and I always made sure that those projects folded Byte in some way so that it wasn't, it was doing double time, working on the business, but also helping me proceed to get my MBA. Starting the company with Lee, my husband, it actually worked quite well because when you're starting a company, your life becomes largely your company, and having that partner who was able to really deal with the shifts and compensate for when I was at school, who also understands everything that we're going through and why we're going through it was really indispensable. We couldn't have done it otherwise.
Do you have any advice for people that work with their partner or their spouse? How to keep it?
I do.
About boundaries or communication?
Sure. I think having very clear definition of roles is critical. We don't, some people say, weekends, turn it off, and do you switch between family and work? I think work will inevitably bleeds into our family life, but it's not doing it in a way where it's causing any negative impact. I think it actually works quite well. I think my one takeaway is, define your roles clearly so that you have your own swim lanes and can, you're not stepping on each other's toes, but only come together when you need to collaborate or make a big decision.
Great. So let's jump ahead. 3 fridges. You get some early validation that you're onto something. Then you kind of have to decide, to really go into business, because you can't sort of be halfway in now, right? So tell us that part of the chapter here.
So at that point, we knew that there was this grain of opportunity, and we shifted into, okay, how big of a need is it? So let's really devote the next 2 weeks to selling this and see how much interest we get. And we got a tremendous amount of interest. A lot of companies, all shapes and sizes, wanted to explore what Byte had to offer. So over that next 6 months, it was scrounging together what capital we could from friends and family and from a handful of angels who, really at that point took a swing on us because we didn't own this technology. That's incredibly high risk when you're building a business on top of a technology that you don't own. But over the course of that next 6 months, we grew to become the biggest customer of Pantry.
So can we just share as much as you feel comfortable, Megan, but again, you make this sound really easy. Oh, we just went to our friends and family. But did you have to form a corporation, or did you already have one? Were you doing this out of your personal bank account? How did you go from, 2 people that are married and live together into being a professional organization?
Yeah, so we had incorporated at the beginning of 180 Eats, and had a separate bank account, separate business credit cards, so that there was a clear delineation from our personal funds. Even though there was quite a bit of blurring in terms of how much capital we put into the business, we did, draw a line so that everything was separate.
That's a good practice.
It is a good practice, and it's very easy to do. There's a lot of information online that will guide you step by step. Here's how you can incorporate.
But it's also, just to note, it's also sometimes a place where entrepreneurs don't pay enough attention because they're just so busy doing what needs to be done that they don't create that clear delineation between themselves and the business, both on a technical level and a legal level, but also on an emotional level. So they often become the business. And, to this point, because you had done that and because you'd kept track of transferring money from your personal account into the business account, it was possible for you then to go to outside investors and tell them, well, me and Lee have put in a significant amount of our own funds, and we'd like you to join us And what did you structure, a convertible note? Is that what you started
We
with?
started with it's similar to a convertible note. It's called a safe note. It's an instrument that's been put out by Y Combinator, and basically it is very similar to a convertible note, except there's no interest. And the intent is that somebody can very quickly write a $25,000, $50,000 check on a safe note, which is very short. And then at the point the company does an equity financing where there's a valuation put on the company, then those safe notes convert based on a certain discount or a certain cap on the valuation. And it allows you to be very quick.
So very much like a convertible, very much like a convertible note without interest.
Yes.
And so that's very entrepreneur friendly.
Very.
And something that your relatives
Mm-hmm.
would. It also works well when you see a value creation milestone on the near horizon, so that you can tell those friends and family that,
right,
like, what that next moment is going to be, where you think you could
mm-hmm.
raise institutional capital or enough capital that somebody
right.
would price the round.
Right. Yeah. So I guess the next piece of the story. At this point, we always knew at some point Byte needed to own the technology. It's too risky to build a business on another platform. And another serendipitous moment arrives after Byte quickly grows to become the largest customer of Pantry. And then May of last year, right around the spring time frame, we had the opportunity to acquire Pantry.
And can we just note that Pantry had raised significant capital,
yeah.
but they basically raised the money to build a hardware
mm-hmm.
solution rather than a platform.
Right.
So it was interesting because they invested a lot of money to build this user interface and this wireless inventory
yeah.
and to outfit these fridges, but they hadn't really focused on what the real unmet need was. The unmet need wasn't for the refrigerator. The unmet need was for fresh, healthy food in workplaces where people need it.
mm-hmm.
And that sounds
nuanced,
like, a nuance,
yeah.
but it's a big
It is.
And I just want to sort of underscore how different entrepreneurs can kind of come at what looks like the same problem with completely different solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us a little bit about the people who founded Pantry
mm-hmm.
and how this all came together.
Yeah. Well, Pantry, it's so interesting. Hindsight's always 20/20. Pantry spent 4 years getting this technology to where it is, and we're still getting it right. It's not easy. The way I like to describe this is that the technology, the ability just to sell fresh food without requiring it on our system, automatically charging someone based on what they remove from the fridge, it's really hard to get right, and it enables us to build this business that we're building. So it's our foundation, it's our bedrock, but even the bedrock is a very tough technical problem to solve. And so what's fascinating is that Pantry, when they first started, they actually started with building a fully vertical business. And when I say that, I mean they started with building the technology, sourcing the food, stocking the food. They quickly realized there's no way, based on our resources and the cash in the bank, that we can tackle this full thing. We just need to get the technology right, and then we can license it out to food service operators that have this problem of getting fresh food to places 24/7. And ultimately, the technology is brilliant, but they were putting it in the hands of customers who really didn't know how to use the data to drive their business. They didn't know how to use the fact that you get the vast majority of your customers' emails, and now you have a way to deliver targeted marketing messages to them. And their businesses weren't built on on variety. You know, a lot of these food service operators, they were producing food in their cafeterias and then putting it in fridges that were either located there after hours when the cafeteria was closed or in remote areas of a hospital that are far from the cafeteria. And
so this is where I'm seeing your background in ad tech and Lee's experience with marketing and communications is starting to kick in. That you guys really saw that you could use that data to, in effect, create kind of a predictive algorithm that would constantly be improved via better communication with the consumer and better tracking of actually what's happening in the fridge, right? So that becomes really the core IP of the business, not the fact that you have a refrigerator that's smart. It's the insight that you can generate from that data platform.
Yeah, I mean, it all is IP, but it builds on itself.
Something strange with
you are talking fast. Hold on.
I'm not talking.
I think you're back now.
Can you hear me now?
Good.
Yeah. Okay.
So the IP, the fridge is certainly IP and how it comes together. But each day we're building more and more IP just on the software and the algorithms behind the actual hardware.
So how many fridges do you have out there now? How big's the company? Every week on my email, I'm getting an email from you saying, we're hiring somebody new this week. So you are really in growth mode. Maybe fast forward a little bit from that wonderful founding story to kind of where you find yourself now. Because you did, well, I do want to close the loop. You did raise capital. You ended up acquiring Pantry, which is amazing. You ended up getting some of not only their inventory of their fridges, but you got some of their talent.
Yeah, absolutely.
You integrated that, their technical talent, integrated that into your team. And now you have hundreds of fridges.
Yeah.
How's it all working?
We've been fortunate to be growing quite a bit, and with growth comes, hiring more people, making sure that let's see how to start this. As we're scaling, we're focused on the technology, because as you put more fridges into the market, these are IoT connected fridges. IoT is really hard. So getting the technology right and making sure the technology is invested in to allow us to scale and support more fridges in market, because we have pretty aggressive growth goals. Team and people. So as we hire, making sure that we're hiring people that share our values, that's really key, because ultimately the people we're hiring now will make hiring decisions of their own at some point. And so that really dictates what the organization will look like, when we're 3 times or 5 times the size that we are right now.
How does an employee or a prospective employee find out about what your values are?
It's a great question.
And what are they?
Well, we know that there's tremendous value in establishing your mission, vision, and values, because it creates shared purpose within the organization. It allows people to make decisions through that lens. It allows people to interview and make hiring decisions based on that. We haven't gone through that exercise in a proper manner yet. But now's the time. So it's a very timely question, because we'll be...
Even though we were forcing you to do it at Food Venture.
You were. That's true. It's a good point.
That assignment.
And it's one of those things that's very easy to let it continue to just stay on your to-do list at the bottom. But it needs to get done, particularly as you scale an organization, because it is so critical to your people and your culture and how the organization evolves. So the other thing, as we scale processes, when you're deploying 20, 30 fridges in a week, there's a number of groups that have to talk to one another. You have to coordinate getting the actual fridges produced and delivered to the client location. You then have to coordinate with your food operations team to make sure that those fridges are freshly stocked and look beautiful on Monday morning. And your client success team to make sure that the client has everything that they need. We're delivering, that first best impression. So getting processes down, but being flexible enough to adjust them as you grow has been another area. And then the communications, I think, is the last piece. When you have more and more people, multiple handing off of the baton, making sure that the systems are set up to support cross-team communications is something that we're always working on.
Now, have you and Lee been able to kind of maintain these swim lanes even though you scaled up? And tell us, how many employees do you have now?
We have about 35 employees right now.
35.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you start thinking, we were talking earlier about the key resources that you need, and resources in terms of our executive team. We knew that we would need rock stars on the technology side, on food operations side, and then Lee really owns sales and marketing. So speaking of Berkeley connections, our VP of Ops was my classmate at Haas, so he came on board early on in the company. And then our Chief Technology Officer, Adam Saw, was an introduction through Haas as well. And we filled those skill gaps. So those are our swim lanes. Those swim lanes will become broader as we scale in terms of the skill sets that we'll need, but being able to rely on and trust and have A players in those key areas was really critical early on.
So now you've had a second child.
Yes.
And other than her, it's a her, right?
Boy.
Or it's a he?
Three-year-old's a girl, and then the 3-month-old is a boy.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so other than the 3-month-old, what keeps you up at night about Byte?
Well, my little guy sleeps soundly. He's the easiest kid ever, thank God. What keeps us up at night? There's this fantastic opportunity in front of us, and the impact that this solution has it's tremendous. We impact the end users, the employees that use this solution on a day-to-day basis by giving them great access to high-quality food. We're an entirely new distribution channel for these natural food brands, and we donate all the food on or just before its best by date actually gets donated to our local community through Extra Food. So the impact is tremendous. That's really what motivates me. We know that there's a very clear need in the market. Really, it's ours to lose. It all comes down to execution and scaling this in the Bay Area, but then into new markets to deliver this fantastic solution to the market. I mean, with Byte, when you look at the types of clients we serve, it's all over the board. We serve Tesla's factory workers and their corporate office. We work with Amazon, but then we also work with a lot of nonprofits like the San Francisco SPCA, hospitals like Marin General, UCSF. It's really all over the board. We have really happy clients really in every industry and across from 35 employees to tens of thousands of employees. And that's another piece that I really love is that the classic Silicon Valley tech company is actually our anti-customer, our anti-target. It's everybody else that we're really trying to meet the needs of.
I don't know if you can hear me, Megan, but my picture froze.
It did. I can hear you though.
Yeah, can you? Okay, that's good. So you can just stare at me there. But tell us a little bit about you were a little bit evasive there on what's keeping you up at night. I mean, I hear you're as a CEO, you're kind of putting this whole picture together and making sure all the pieces you've got that CEO vision of the business. You're seeing that you've got to hire effectively. You've got to make sure that most important, your customers are happy with what they're doing, and then you're continually optimizing the performance of the company, and that drops right down to the bottom line and the profitability and the amount of money that you can put back in the business to scale up. So can you talk just a little bit about how you're thinking about the future and tell us a little bit about the fundraising, and then we'll wrap up here for the day, and I'll see if I can fix my camera in the meantime.
Yeah, sure. We know, so what keeps me up at night, it is the execution. We know what needs to be done. We've created a sales process that's predictable and repeatable. We know who our target is within an organization in terms of who we sell to. And so, executing on the sales side is really what it comes down to in terms of scaling in the Bay Area. Of course, I would fail as a CEO if I ever let the company run out of money. So you always have to have a very good financial picture of where your runway is at, and if and when we want to do our next fundraising round, the type of investor we want to be working with, and where that will get us. So I'm spending a lot of time thinking about that right now. But we're in that position of we've found what they call product market fit. We need to create a scalable way of creating growth in this market, and then figure out, okay, now how do we stamp this out in the next market and the next market after that?
So the places obviously to work on the efficiency would be one on the sales process, like how do you shrink that sales pipeline so it goes from 6 months from the first time you mention this to a prospective customer to the time you actually get it installed and you're generating revenue. You compress that. And then the other area I know you're working on a lot is just in terms of engagement. This is like a new thing. All of a sudden it shows up, and it's not something people are used to. How do you get them to try it, and then not only try it, how do you get them to use it regularly? So what are the things you're doing to
engage,
improve?
It's not, none of it's rocket science. It's typically if somebody wants to work with us, they already have that person who we're engaging with, who made the decision to bring Byte into their organization, is already really excited. And so they're a champion, and capitalizing on that excitement, arming them with the tools to promote this within the organization has been key. So whether that be providing them with a stack of $200 off coupons to hand out to everybody, sending a survey to get a sense of what the food preferences are in that organization so that they get a preview of this fantastic food that's soon going to be at their fingertips. All of these little tactics allow us to drive as many of those employees to that first purchase in the first couple of weeks that Byte is on site. And then when you have just one person have a fantastic experience, you do what everybody does at the office. You talk with your colleagues and you tell them, oh my God, I love this sandwich, or wow, did you see that we have Blue Bottle here? And that creates this self-fulfilling, okay, well, he tried it, so now I can try it. And it's less risky for those who are a bit more skeptical.
So what's been your most painful learning experience over the last 12 months? What
we don't have time. Oh my God. Most painful. There are many times, bootstrapping your own company and having all your eggs in one basket and seeing our personal savings slowly drain in tandem with needing to raise capital. Many sleepless nights there. The acquisition of Pantry it didn't just come together brilliantly. It was a lot of hard work. Yeah, a lot of hard work, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of stress. But ultimately, we had to, sell the vision of why we were the right team to take Pantry under our wing and really build out this great vision. A lot of it does come down to selling, believing in what you're doing, having the checks in place to, sanity check your assumptions, and then being able to sell someone on that vision.
Well, one of the things I've always really admired and respected about you, Megan, is that you bring that kind of passion and commitment in kind of a quiet way. And
Thank you.
You and I have walked through a lot of presentation decks, and one of the things I've always really appreciated about your approach is that you don't oversell. A lot of entrepreneurs talk really big picture and big numbers and with great enthusiasm. And you've always brought, I think, a very calm and level-headed and really credible enthusiasm to your selling. And so I just wanted to point that out because there are different ways for entrepreneurs to sell and to present. And I think the other thing that is so really remarkable about your style of leadership is that you're very persistent in a kind of a methodical, pragmatic manner. I always have seen you don't get flustered by things, at least outwardly. You just kind of keep coming back to the problem. You don't sort of get, entrenched in the emotion around it. You're just very much kind of going to the issue that needs to be addressed, and then you show up for it. And so I think those qualities are really wonderful to see. In the food business, we see a lot of passion. We see people coming with a tremendous amount of energy and love and strong feelings about what they're doing. And I think the lessons that I've learned from you and Byte is that there's a very kind of focused and kind of persistent, path forward to find your way to the solution.
Thank you, Will.
I can't wait to check in with you again soon and see how Byte is doing. And if anyone has the opportunity to enjoy the food that's coming out of your machines, by all means, please, send good words around about Byte Foods and Megan Mokri's company. So thanks again for joining us today, Megan.
Thank you, Will.
And, I will sign you off and then talk to our guests about our next session, which is going to be, coming up next month in May 25th. We're going to have a conversation with David Lee, who is the COO of Impossible Foods, which is one of the leading plant-based protein companies making the Impossible Burger. And David is a seasoned food executive, old friend of mine, and is now really leading the charge at Impossible. And we're going to talk a lot about climate and the way conventional agriculture, particularly the growing of beef, has such huge impact on climate change. And David's going to be talking about how Impossible Foods created its mission and vision and product to address that. So join us next month on FoodBiz Plus, and we'll see you then. Take care. Bye-bye.